Feels like it's been forever. We are on Psalm 86. Get back into our routine
Feels
here.
so good to be sitting here. My goodness.
What's that?
Feels so good to be sitting here
I
right now.
know, I know. All week last week, I thought, it just feels like a long time. Even weekends for me feel like a long time. Okay, so my 86 says, "Great is your steadfast love." This is a prayer of David. Kathy,
Devoted trust in times of deep trouble.
well, that was short. There's a little side note here for us to think about. The heading says heart condition. This psalm holds the distinction of being one of the few psalms labeled a prayer of David. Without question, David lifted his heart to the Lord in these verses. The introduction makes clear his poverty of spirit. His cries for mercy continued throughout the day. As men sought his life, David sought the Lord in the middle of this prayer, comparing his God to the gods of the world. He erupted in praise. There is none like you among the gods, O Lord, nor are there any works like yours. However, he still confessed to having a divided heart, a heart not solely focused upon God. David believed it would take nothing less than a work of God to change him. So he prayed, "Teach me your way, O Lord, that I may walk in your truth. Unite my heart to fear your name. Give thanks to you, O Lord my God, with my whole heart, and I will glorify your name forever." Um, Kim, are you up to reading?
Yes, I will. Bend down and hear my prayer, O Lord, and answer me, for I am deep in trouble. Protect me from death, for I try to follow all your laws. Save me, for I am serving you and trusting you. Be merciful, O Lord, and I am looking up to you in constant hope. Give me happiness, O Lord, for I worship only you. O Lord, you are so good and kind, so ready to forgive, so full of mercy for all who ask your aid. Listen closely to my prayer, O God. Hear my urgent cry. I will call to you whenever trouble strikes, and you will help me. 8. Where among the heathen gods is there a God like you? Where are their miracles? All the nations, and you made each one, will come and bow before you, Lord, and praise your great and holy name. For you are great and do great miracles. You alone are God. Tell me where you want me to go, and I will go there. May every fiber of my being unite in reverence to your name. With all my heart, I will praise you. I will give glory to your name forever. For you love me so much. You are constantly so kind. You have rescued me from deepest hell. 14. O God, proud and insolent men defy me, violent, godless men who are trying to kill me. But you are merciful and gentle, Lord, slow in getting angry, full of constant loving kindness and of truth. So look down and pity and grant strength to your servant and save me. Send me a sign of your favor. When those who hate me so when those who hate me see it, they will lose face because you help and comfort me. The end.
I don't know. I think in the past, I always thought of David as like kind of being the victorious king and, riding on the clouds. But I feel like a lot of his life was in deep despair.
Does seem like it.
Like through here, it's like he's always constantly fighting something or someone. Well, and I mean, he wasn't allowed to build the temple. Solomon was the one to build the temple because there was so much bloodshed during his reign. He was the warring king. So, I mean,
I just look at these as this is like his deepest heart. These are laments of his desperateness and his dependence on God. Like this is so raw and I he doesn't let anybody else see this side of him. This is for God. And it's just it is so humble and just it makes me teary-eyed to read it. Just
yeah. Yeah, that's kind of how I
because
was feeling too.
he just
And I
so
guess what was
yeah.
outward facing, if you're a good leader, what's outward facing is not always, you know what I mean? Like you don't show your weaknesses outward facing when you're a leader. All right. Any other thoughts before I start reading John MacArthur's commentary? The overview 1 through 17. This psalm is an individual lament in which David expresses his distress and overcomes that distress through praise and worship. There is a sense of urgency demonstrated by some 14 prayer requests. Undergirding the request is the covenant relationship. Roman numeral 1, verses 1 through 7, is the request for God's attention. Roman numeral 2, verses 8 through 13, is the testimony to God's uniqueness. Roman numeral 3, which are verses 14 to 17, is the plea for God's deliverance. Verse 2. Does anybody need me to repeat any of those? I see Claudia. I'll just go over them again real quick.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Verses 1 through 7 is the request for God's attention. Verses 8 through 13, the testimony to God's uniqueness. And then 14 to 17, the plea for God's deliverance. Just give me a thumbs up if you're good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Claudia, you still need some? You still need one? 1, 2, or 3? Or are you good? I can go back to them. You're good? Okay. Verse 2, I am godly. David, though recognizing his sinfulness in verse 1, insisted that by the grace of God he had not broken his covenant with the Lord. Verse 4, soul. The psalmist requests that his inner person would be preserved according to the covenant agreement, which I believe you can read about in Deuteronomy 7 and 8 and 20. Chapter 7 and 8 and 20. Among the gods, David is here contrasting the true God with the imaginary deities of the heathen nations. Verse 9, all the nations worship. The psalmists and prophets often look into the future messianic age when all the nations of the world will worship the Lord. Verse 11, unite my heart. The psalmist prays that he would have an undivided heart, single-heartedly loyal to his Lord. And then there's a reference to Romans 7:15 and James 1:8. Verse 14, insolent men. The insolent, proud, and arrogant are those who act independently from God, rebelling against him and his people. Verse 16, the son of your maidservant. David asks for special favor from God, just as a servant born in the household would receive more than a servant brought in from the outside the household. David asks for special favor from God, just as a servant born in the household would receive more than a servant brought in from outside the household. Oh, must have been a cultural thing there. Verse 17, a sign. a request for a favorable indication that would demonstrate that God was truly on David's side. The end. Does anybody need anything repeated? Any thoughts before Kathy picks up with Worsby?
Okay. In the midst of a group of 4 psalms attributed to the sons of Korah, you find one psalm by David, the only Davidic psalm in the entire 3rd book of Psalms. When David wrote it, he was facing some formidable enemies whom we cannot identify, verse 14, at a time when he was poor and needy and calling for God's help. The remarkable thing about the psalm is that it is a mosaic of quotations from other parts of the Old Testament, especially, I guess it's supposed to be Psalm 28, 25 through 28 and 40 and 54 through 57 and Exodus 34. Since David wrote these psalms, he had every right to quote from them and adapt them to his present needs. At a time of danger, when he felt inadequate to face the battle, David found 3 encouragements in the Lord, and so may we today. I guess the first of those encouragements is going to be verses 1 through 7. God's covenant is secure. His statement, I am holy, was not an egotistical statement, but rather the declaration that David was son of the covenant and was a son of the covenant and belonged wholly to the Lord. It is the translation of the Hebrew word hesed, H-E-S-E-D, and is the equivalent of saints in the New Testament.
Wait, go back. So hesed is another word for saints?
Yes, it's the equivalent of saints in the New Testament.
I wonder what verse he's talking about.
It has in there, it must be well, it references chapter 4 verse 3 and chapter 12 verse 1, but I think it's talking about the first verse, because it starts out saying I am holy was not an egotistical statement. Let me see if I can find it.
Mine says I am. Are you talking about in 86?
Yeah.
Mine says, incline my ear, O Lord, and answer me, for I am poor and needy. Oh, then in verse 2 it says, preserve my life, for I am godly. Save your servant who trusts in you. You are my God.
Yeah, it could be holy, could mean godly or devoted too. So I guess that's where that word hesed comes in.
So H-A-S-I-D?
H-E-S-E-D.
H-E
S-E-D.
S-E-D. And that can mean servant.
Saints.
Saints.
From the New Testament. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Then to continue, the word is related to Hased, H-A-S-I-D, which means mercy, kindness, steadfast love.
Mercy.
From verse 5, 13, and 15. Mercy, kindness, steadfast love.
And that which verses what?
5, 13, and 15.
Okay.
Say those verses again, please.
Verses 5, 13, and 15.
Thank you.
5, mine has steadfast in 5. Steadfast love. Oh, so does 13.
And then 15.
And then 15 also has steadfast love. Huh. Okay.
As he began his prayer, David pleaded for help on the basis of his covenant relationship with the Lord, just as believers today pray in the name of Jesus and on the basis of his covenant of grace. And there are references to Luke, 1 Corinthians, and Hebrews. The psalm has many connections with the Davidic covenant, reference to 2 Samuel 7. We get the impression that David had the covenant text before him and selected verses from his psalm to parallel what the Lord had said to him, and he had said to the Lord. David is called servant, and there are a bunch of places where it must reference him being called servant. And both texts refer to greater things God had done. The uniqueness of the Lord is another shared theme, as well as Jehovah's supremacy over all the supposed gods. In both, God's great name is magnified. In his psalm, David used three basic names for God: Jehovah, verses 1, 6, 11, and 17; Adonai, verses 3, 4, 8, 9, 12, and 15; and Elyon, verses 2, 10, 12, and 14. On the basis of God's covenant promises, David could argue with the Lord and plead his case. In verses 1 through 7, the word "for" usually signals one of David's persuasive reasons why the Lord should help him. In verse 5, he changes from "for I" to "for thou." And that would be in verses 5, 7, and 10. Climaxing in verse 10 with "for thou art great." There are at least 14 personal requests in the psalm, which suggest to us that effective praying is specific. David cried or called, and the Lord answered, verses 3, 5, and 7. Okay, then we move on to the second encouragement. God's character is unchanging, verses 8 to 13.
Say that again. God's character is unchanging.
Yes, God's character is unchanging. There is none like unto thee, verse 8, is the confession of a man who truly knows God and remembered Israel's confession at the Exodus. During 10 years of exile in the wilderness of Judea, David had learned much about God's character and the way he works in the lives of his people. God is great in who he is and what he does, and the false gods of all the nations are nothing. In spite of his present troubles, David the prophet, and it references Acts 2:30, saw the day coming when all the nations would enter the Messianic kingdom. God made the nations and assigns their boundaries and determines their destinies. And there are references to Acts and Isaiah. In verses 11 to 13, David focused on his own walk with the Lord. After he was delivered from danger, he wanted to walk so as to please and honor the Lord. Unite my heart means I want to have an undivided heart, wholly fixed on the Lord. A perfect heart is a sincere heart that loves God alone and is true to him. References to James and Deuteronomy. He promised to praise God forever for delivering him from the grave. A hint here of future resurrection. The third encouragement, God's glory shall prevail. Verses 14 to 17. David's enemies were proud of themselves and their abilities, violent and totally ignorant of and indifferent to the God of Israel. But David looked away from them to the Lord, who had saved and guided him all his life. And then it says his confession in verse 15 is based on Exodus 34:6. The Apostle Paul tells us that knowing these attributes of God ought to lead people to repentance. Romans 2:4. The son of thine handmaid in verse 16 means your devoted servant. And there are references to Ruth and 1 Samuel. Children born to servants were considered especially faithful since they were brought up in the master's household. Since David was the Lord's faithful servant, it was his master's duty to protect him and deliver him. But David wanted that deliverance to bring glory to the Lord and to demonstrate to the nations that Jehovah alone was God. It wasn't just warfare, it was a witness, a sign of the goodness of the Lord to David. It was his way of praying, "Hallowed be thy name." When our requests are in God's will and glorify his name, we can be sure he will answer. The end.
I wonder, I put a question mark on the son of your maidservant, because I get what the commentaries are saying, but in the show, The House of David, one of the things that they took artistic liberties with was showing David's mother was not what's his dad's name? David's dad's wife. Like they acted like the mother was not his actual the wife, but maybe like a concubine or something. So when I read that, I was like, I wonder if that's where they got that from. I don't know that that's actual case. I feel like they did take a lot of liberties, but the son of your maidservant, like why would he say the son of your maidservant? Like why wouldn't he just say?
I don't know if it would say anything about that in those references or not.
Just think that's a weird way to word something. I'm gonna go ahead and do Tony while you look at that, Kathy. 1 through 5. David appeals to God for help. He affirms his need for God. I am poor and needy. His submission to God. I am faithful. And his dependence to God. Before I go on, Kathy, I had God's character is unchanging. Was there a fourth one or a third one for 14 through 17?
Yeah, God's glory shall prevail.
I missed that somehow. Okay. I am faithful, and his dependence on God, your servant, trusts in you. He is confident of God's character and knows the Lord was kind and ready to forgive. Likewise, in your times of need, deal with any known sin in your life and appeal to God's character. 6 through 10. Again, David calls on God to hear his plea. Though many gods are worshipped in the world, there is none like the true and living God. He alone can perform supernatural works and wonders. He is incomparable. Why would we turn to anyone or anything else? Verses 11 through 13. David asked the Lord to teach him so that he could have an undivided mind to follow him, rather than trying to pursue two conflicting ways to live. This kind of single-minded devotion to God leads to obedience. I will live by your truth and worship. I will praise you with all my heart. Verse 14. King David asks for strength to deal with the arrogant people who have attacked him. What made them arrogant? They would not let God guide them. The prideful person lives life from his own limited, distorted viewpoint. The humble person, by contrast, lives life from God's heavenly, righteous viewpoint. Verse 15. God is compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in faithful love and truth. For deliverance, then, David appeals to God's righteous character that he revealed to Moses. See Exodus 34:6. This God of compassion, grace, faithful love, and truth was available to Moses. He was available to David, and he is available to you. 16 and 17. David wants a sign of God's goodness, showing that he would deliver him from his enemies so that all would know that God has worked on his behalf. The end. Did it say anything, Kathy?
It's not saying anything about as far as like David's mother. I mean, it's basically talking about different handmaids.
Okay.
You know, and how the Lord didn't forget them is what I'm picking up out of those references it has there.
Okay. I mean, we saw that in Hagar. with Sarah.
Yeah, because this is talking about, I guess in Ruth, it's talking about Ruth. And then in First Samuel, it's talking about, I believe it would be Hannah.
Mhm. Oh, one was Hannah a handmaid?
Um,
She just wanted to get pregnant. She was at the altar praying to get pregnant. She's Samuel's mom. So
yeah.
maybe just her heart.
Well, it says here in First Samuel 1:11, and she made a vow saying, "O Lord Almighty, if you will only look upon your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life, and no razor will ever be used on his head." So it's not saying she was a handmaid, but just calling her a servant.
Yeah.
She's
Okay. So, I mean, it would indicate like that he is talking about like that he's taking the lowest position and humbleness.
yeah.
Well, what is the difference between handmade, and servant?
I don't know.
Is there?
Well, I know like for instance, like Hagar was Sarah's handmaid, like
Mm.
she helped Sarah, but then Sarah gave her over to Abraham to have a child. Is someone looking that up or do I need to?
In that way.
Okay, Google has here a handmaid or handmaiden is a specific type of personal female servant, whereas servant is a broad general term for anyone employed to perform domestic tasks or service for another. Historically, a handmaid was often a personal attendant to a high status woman, infrequently implying a more intimate live in or subordinate role, sometimes even servitude compared to general classification of a servant.
Any other thoughts?
Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome.
Any other thoughts?
Had some practical applications based on this one. Um, one was honest prayer. Two was to ground requests in God's character. Three was the wider vision that global worship is an example of balancing personal issues with God's grand plan. Integrity inside and out, and having an undivided heart is very important. I think you did a good job of giving an example of that, Chrissy, when you went back and tried to pay for the sandwich you stole. And 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 the last one is expect visible help. Verse 17, God offers timely encouragements.
Just Claudia is not in our text chain. Claudia, at the airport, I go to Java City in Wilmington to normally get my coffee and I order a sandwich and I needed extra protein. So I asked her whatever it was that I ordered, if they could just put an egg on it so I would have extra protein. And so I'm waiting for my food and I'm thinking about stuff else. Actually, I was thinking about Jacob and Jacob's Latin, but a whole different rabbit hole. But this thing came out and it had like a hard fried egg on top of it. And I'm like, da, 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 da. And I pick it up and I go back and I sit down and I take a bite out of it. And I'm like, I don't remember that saying that I have avocado on the sandwich. And I'm like, this really looks like avocado toast. And I'm eating, and I look because I'm sitting directly across from Java, and I look over and I see there's confusion happening over there. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is not my sandwich. So then I I sat there a couple seconds, like, do I say anything? Do I just try to sit here and like secretly eat my sandwich? And then finally I was like, I have to go make it right. Like I can't stand anything on my conscience. So the poor man that was standing there, they had made him a new sandwich, my actual food sandwich. They made him a new piece of toast. Mine was actually, he apparently understood the importance of protein also. And I said, I'm sorry, but I think I stole your sandwich. And he looked very confused. I don't think he spoke a lot of English. And so the woman that works there, always very, very kind. They play Christian music. They were playing Break Every Chain when I was there. Anyway, so I said to her, I said, I'm really sorry. I just saw the egg and thought it was mine. And I said, I'm willing to pay for it. They were very kind about it. But anyway, that's the sandwich story.
Oh, I wished I could have been there to see it.
But no, when I sent you guys the thing about Dan in the Chili's bathroom, that's me. Like I'm weirdly awkward and often stick my foot in my mouth and just do dumb things. But like
You're
a
not
normal
the only
person would have looked at that and said, I ordered a sandwich. I didn't order avocado toast. I looked at it and saw egg, my protein right there.
That's
Any other
good.
thoughts? Were you done, Jess? Because I kind of interrupted you.
No, that was it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, ladies, if there's nothing else, this concludes. Oh, wait a minute. We have to do trivia. Lori's like, Julie's like, yeah, you better be doing trivia.
Trivia time.
You guys will know this one. Who did God send to prepare the way for Jesus?
John
John the Baptist.
Yeah, y'all are like John the Baptist, duh. John 3:27 through 28. That is correct. Gold stars for everybody. Now, this concludes the reading of God's word for today. Until tomorrow.
For sure.
For sure. And
For
for
certain.
certain.
Good to be back.